Okay, so we're back, and this week it's a little bit different because we actually have college football to look forward to for the first time in what feels like a lifetime. We had it last week. Week 0 action was awesome. We're going to recap week 0. We're going to talk rosters. We're going to talk quarterbacks and everything in between. I'm joined today by a friend of the show. Jay does Unfair Sports, great content creator here on YouTube. Jay, tell the people where they can find you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Ty, for having me. As you mentioned, Jay with Unfair Sports. You can find me on YouTube. I do a all sports type podcast that comes out twice a week where I just kind of ramble about what's going on in the news in sports in general. And the YouTube channel is dedicated to college sports, a lot of OU content, college football content, and honestly, sometimes just sports in general. So I appreciate you adding me on.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Cam's in here. Good to see you, Cam.
Yeah, Cam
Preston.
connected us.
Yeah, man, Cam has been just genuinely awesome for me. Like on very real, he's connected me with you. He's connected me with Indy Sooner. He's connected me with Jonathan. I mean, he has been awesome for my channel, and I really do appreciate Cam. He says mod me. After this stream, get with me. I'll figure out how to do that because I am certainly not opposed. But Preston, you're here as well. Before we hop into this, let the people know where they can find you as well. You look like you've gotten out of the no power situation into the car as he's figuring all that out.
Yeah, in Oklahoma, there's a lot of gross weather coming through, so I totally understand trying to figure things out.
Yeah, absolutely. As he's figuring it out, we wanted to kick this off with some week 0, and we got some people already talking about Jaden Davis, right, with Oklahoma, and we're going to get to the roster reaction, Patrick. But before we get there, week 0 just happened. We'd be remiss in our jobs if we just glossed over that like it didn't happen. Jay, I have a feeling I know what you're going to be saying, but what was your most surprising game of week 0?
I'm going to be honest, it's probably the one that everyone was paying the most attention to. It was that Nebraska Northwestern game, and that Northwestern was able to pull that out. To me, it felt like Nebraska was just not prepared. They weren't prepared to be in Ireland and play the game that they needed to play. It's either they weren't prepared or they got a lot of problems that they need to fix. I mean, Scott Frost felt the need to tell us about how much his offensive linemen are vomiting in practice. It tells you they're working so hard in preparation. And then that left tackle was getting abused the entire game by Northwestern. That, to me, I paid attention to that game the most because they play Oklahoma the third game of the season. And that tells me that they're going to have a problem, irregardless of how hard they look like they were trying to play. They're going to have a problem going against Oklahoma. And so seeing Northwestern go out there, and Pat Fitzgerald is, I think he's a really good coach. I feel like he's like David Shaw. They're consistent up, down, but they're at a spot where the school is just happy that they're competing. So they don't really care about all the extra. It's like, you make it to a bowl game, great. You don't, if you get a good recruit, great. If you don't, they're not hardcore into winning. Like, they don't have that want to. And so watching Nebraska just get abused out there in Ireland, that baffled me that Scott Frost wasn't prepared better for this. He should lose his job after October 1st.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about this, man, is there's so many different layers we can look at this. And I do completely agree. That was, from an entertainment standpoint, a great football game to watch. I was at the edge of my seat. It was a great way for us to kick off college football. So there's certainly no dispute. And I think even Jay, you would probably agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
Not good for Nebraska, but in terms of kicking off the college football season, I don't know what more you could have asked for than what we just got, especially with this offseason. It was, dare I say, poetic justice. But here's the thing that's so interesting to me, right? The puking comments were strange. That was strange. Cam commented this right here. What was that onside kick? Cam, you're right. There's no doubt that onside kick was not a good call. I've seen people try and say that, but if they get it, then it is a good idea. It is a good call. And you're right. If they do recover, we are sitting here talking about a different story, but I liken that to, Jay, if you took out all of your life savings right now, every penny you had, and invested in the lottery, If you win, come Saturday, I'm going to say that was a good move. You just exponent. But if you lose, that doesn't diminish what a poor decision it was. Even if you win, that still does not take away from what a poor decision it was. The results may change, but it does not take away from the poor quality of decision. But I'm going to offer you this right here. There's two reasons Nebraska lost that game. Neither one of them is the onside kick. First and foremost, they lost the turnover battle. You're going to have a hard time beating a well-coached team in Northwestern, right? Because I completely agree with you. How good of a call is Pat Fitzgerald? Or how good of a coach, is Pat Fitzgerald? I think that remains to be seen. But what we do know is his teams are always disciplined. They're always disciplined. You can't lose the turnover battle against that team. And two, they couldn't stop the run, and therefore they massively lost the time of possession battle. You're not going to beat a veteran quarterback with a veteran coach that's disciplined, losing the time of possession battle. So going forward, what are you looking as an Oklahoma fan, right? Because you said it, October 1st is a game you're highlighting for good reason, but what are the implications around that game now?
Now, that game is critical for Scott Frost, if you want me to be honest. And then it's September 17th, but October 1st is the Scott Frost cutoff for his buyout. But that game is critical for him because he's going to need to either make that game very competitive or win if he wants to keep his job. Nebraska needs to know that this train is still on the right track. He's a hometown guy, and a lot of schools seems to want to do that. Guys that graduated from there or played there. Michigan is known for always wanting a Michigan man, as if that makes much of a difference. But Scott Frost is that guy for Nebraska, and so that game is critical for him he has to at least be competitive in that game. And so for Oklahoma, knowing that they're basically backed into a corner, Oklahoma has to come out and be as disciplined as possible. They've got to be the Northwestern of discipline if they want to make sure that they dominate, which I kind of expect a 2-score game in that one that Oklahoma will win it in. But they can't let Nebraska have an opportunity to even get close enough to take a lead, because that could be the end of the season, honestly, for Oklahoma, especially as it being a first year for Brent Venables. It's going to lead to nothing but criticism. Everybody's going to say everything bad about the school. Oh, Lincoln Riley's not here no more. This is the reason why all this is going on. So now I don't expect that. Now, hear me out here, but I don't expect that. But for anybody, this game is way more important for Frost than it is for anybody else. He has to show that he still has command of this team. Casey Thompson actually had a solid game, and kind of like the commenter said, the game was good overall. That onside kick was it's like a degenerate gambler. Like you said, I can throw all my money out on the table and play roulette. If I hit that one number, I'm a genius. But most degenerate do not do that.
Yeah,
or
and it doesn't
they hit that number. Right. Or they hit that number and they lose all of it 15 minutes later doing something else because they think they've got the luck. That's the problem with the play like that. Irregardless if he hits it or not, he'll try it again, he'll fail, and it'll be at the worst possible time of a game. So I can't even call that a good or even a outside the box play because the game was a little too close. You could tell the way that Northwestern was muddling Nebraska. Like Ryan, Hiliski? I'm sorry,
Hiliski. Yeah.
Ryan Hiliski literally looked like he was just hanging out for 8 seconds every time he was passing the ball. Now that's hyperbole, but he was relaxed. He had no pressure. And Hull looks like Evan Hull. He looked like he was going for the Rex Berkman role in the NFL. He was just running downfield, down their throat. They were playing Big Ten football, and I felt like Nebraska was part of the Pac-12.
I mean, because the thing is when I already talked about, I had to eat some crow the next day, and I did so, right? I did in my post game, and I laid out all the areas where I was wrong because there wasn't much where I was correct in that game. First and foremost, I talked about how Northwestern's line, I expected them to be good, especially that left tackle. But what's the rest of the line going to be able to do against the Nebraska front that is talented? Well, turns out they were able to do everything they wanted and more. First area, I was wrong. Then I look at it and I'm thinking, okay, well, Nebraska was able to run so successfully last year, and no doubt about it, the result of last year's game does not dictate this year's game. Absolutely, I concede that. But you would think if you were that successful running the ball last year, you wouldn't struggle in the manner you did this year. There was a lot of just super intriguing things. Now, one thing that you pointed out that I do find incredibly interesting with Nebraska, and especially as the game relates to Oklahoma, I like how you're talking about how this is such a big game for Nebraska and that you think Oklahoma, no matter what happens with Nebraska, Oklahoma is going to take that game serious. And I always think back to a book I had to read I was a political science major in college, right? Not the best decision, but I digress. I had to read Sun Tzu, Art of War. You never have your opponent backed into a corner, because the most dangerous opponent is one that is backed into a corner with only one way to go through you. You always leave an out. What I mean when I say that is Nebraska is a team that's a wounded animal right now. They've got nothing to lose with Scott Frost, because one area where I disagree with you is slightly, I don't think it matters if they play Oklahoma close, man. I don't. When you're 5-26 in one score games, I don't know that losing to Northwestern in a close game, I don't know that a close game against Oklahoma saves his job. I just don't.
I can see it there, especially because they showed a stat during the game. He's like 3 for 20 when trailing at halftime in the Scott Frost era. That tells you that, yeah, it's definitely bad. But I had to pull up this Nebraska game from last year when they won 56-7, and you're 100% right. They ran it down Northwestern's throat. But it was also Adrian Martinez, 8 carries, 50 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yant had 127 yards on 13 carries. Can Casey Thompson not run? Does he not have that in his repertoire as a quarterback? I mean, I recall seeing him move last year for Texas against Oklahoma in that game where Oklahoma came all the way back. But you can tell when he gets pressured too much, he's not going anywhere. It's like he panics. Now, that runaround play he did and then got to the sideline and stepped back and threw it, it was cute. But that's not something that he can do on a regular basis. That's not something that he can handle. It looks like the pressure when it comes too much, which that Nebraska offensive line is allowing, he's going to fold. And I think the old Texas version, I see why he left Texas. Let's put it like that. I thought initially, I was like, man, why did Texas let him leave? He looked like he's matured. He's getting there. And I was like, oh, that's why they let him leave. That's why they was like, sure, if you want to transfer, go right ahead. You're going to be in competition. So you're right. Frost may not get an opportunity because of that record post that game if it's close, but I don't know what they're going to do. October 1st is that date. I think it drops by like $5 million on the buyout. So if they do fire him, it will be right after that date. Yeah. I'm not sure what game that is, but yeah, they're in a world of hurt. I feel bad for Nebraska.
And in a year where a few years ago we point to Michigan State for a team that did amazing work in the transfer portal, and the next year came strong. Oklahoma, your team, did incredible work in the transfer portal. Now, we don't know what that's going to look like, but I mean, if you and I were betting, man, I think we would both bet that the work done in the transfer portal is going to massively increase what this team is able to do. We didn't see that against Nebraska. That's my biggest problem here, Jay. We didn't see a different Nebraska. We're talking a different year where they won in the transfer portal. They got a lot there, and we saw the exact same Nebraska. And what's more, this will be my last little point, and then I'll let you close this on Nebraska. Pat Narduzzi, when Whipple left Pitt, questioned his consistency in play calling, stating that he was someone who would forego the rushing attack for the passing attack. I'm not saying that's what happened on Saturday, but there were a lot of times where it was deep shot on first down, deep shot on second down, deep shot on third down, when you can't even block the guys in front of you. It just was a bad look from every single angle. I'll let you get the closing talk on the Nebraska-Northwestern game.
I'm trying to figure out what happened to the Scott Frost at UCF. Where did he go? Is it really that hard to get Florida talent in Nebraska? Is it really hard to get talent in Nebraska, period? Because all we've seen is, especially when we got to the Big Ten, the talent shift. They're not really producing as many in the state. They're not getting anybody there to the state. I just want to know, where is UCF Scott Frost? I felt like he was too comfortable when he went to Nebraska and said, I'm going home, blah, blah, blah. where is that guy? Where's the intensity that we had from that UCF guy?
No,
I just feel like he just mailed it in.
hasn't been seen. Now, another game I do want to talk about this weekend, especially for you, and I really want to just kind of pass this to you on this one because it concerns Oklahoma, and that's UTEP. They played in week 0, played against my alma mater, and hey, wouldn't you know it, my alma mater got out the dub. So, UTEP, what is Oklahoma looking for week 1? I did a video today kind of not previewing it, talking about first-year head coaches, and in that I talked about Oklahoma and UTEP, about how you certainly can't look past UTEP. They're not going to give you the game. You have to go take it, but it's a great opportunity for us to learn. What are you looking forward to?
This game, and I'm going to do an actual preview coming out tomorrow with every game for this season about my predictions on each one. And I'll give you guys kind of a preview on it. This is the most important game to me on the schedule.
Interesting.
Because this is the game where Oklahoma either sets the tone for the entire season and reminds everybody of who Oklahoma is, who Brent Venable is, who Jeff Lebby is, or if they put out a dud and this game is too close, might be in a world of hurt. You can recover from it, but I feel like this is the tone setter. You've got to go out there and dominate. Got to be a blowout. There's no exceptions whatsoever in this game to me. If it's too close, I'm concerned. And it's only because they've prepared themselves so well coming into this game. If they're not showing that they can just dominate on a team, no offense to UTEP, but it's UTEP. This is a team that Oklahoma traditionally just blows out. If they don't blow them out in this game with everything that they have perfectly lined up, I'm going to be nervous about every other game. And that's just me being 100% honest as a fan. The Tulane type game, that's what concerns me. If this is like Tulane, I'm concerned about the way the season goes. That is exactly my first thought in my recording about this. So, but with that, talking about the staff, and I'll be really quick with this. I have been a super defender of Venables coming to Oklahoma and the way it's set up, because this is a different type of setup than you traditionally see when a new first-time head coach comes to a school. He didn't come alone and start assembling a staff. He brought his entire staff from Clemson with him. They know the schemes together. They coached together for a few years. Just about everybody on that staff besides Jay Valai has worked together intimately on how this team is supposed to run. Bring in Schmitty, who worked with Venables in the early Oklahoma years. You've put together a defense, which has been our problem in Oklahoma for the last few years, that the staff knows what to do, and all they got to do is coach those boys up. Plus, Venables and staff has been known for coaching guys up. They did that at Clemson. They had 4 defensive linemen get drafted.
One of the better defensive lines I've seen, yeah.
Yes, and this year Clemson is considered to have the best defensive line in the country, at least top 3 to 4. Right.
Nick Easton's a dude, yeah.
So because of that, that staff has just worked together, and that's something that's really big. Like I said, in difference you get from other staffs, and then you bring in Lebby, who, to be honest, Venables may run this similar to Saban does and tell the OC, do your thing, just don't do nothing stupid. That's it. You do your thing. I don't know that. That's your job. I'm gonna be the CEO and oversee, but I want you to do your thing. Lebby was under Art Browse with all the unfortunate stuff there. Innovative offensive coach. Lane Kiffin, Josh Heupel, who did some great things in Oklahoma. No, he's been under some really, really, really great minds. And so he brings that in just like he did at Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin. There's a good chance that Venables will let him do his job. He'll do his job, and everything will actually come together. So long-winded answer, but to me, this game is so critical because we need to set a tone.
Absolutely. Preston, I'm going to pass it to you right before I just need to make this point because it piggybacks off of something, Jay, you said. You talk about the continuity. Love that. Hangover, I'm going to highlight this for a while because I couldn't agree more. Tackling for Oklahoma, that's going to stay there for a bit. I digress. One of the points you made, it was continuity. You have continuity at key positions in the coaching staff, especially along that defense, man. I mean, just great work. And Todd Bates, I mean, I think I've said all I need to say about Todd Bates. I'm not going to bore Oklahoma fans. They've heard me talk about Todd Bates enough. my favorite hire y'all made.
Mm-hmm.
A little biased, former, Crimson Tide member, great player for us, someone who I was always hoping would come home. Y'all just got to him first. But there's more than just coaching continuity here. You have Jeff Lebby having continuity with Dylan Gabriel. I talked today in a video that will be out tomorrow highlighting the Big 12 quarterbacks with none other than Quarterback Spotlight, someone who works with quarterbacks at the high school level, who works with MLB players even. He was telling me that he thinks that the continuity of relationship with Lebby and Dylan Gabriel is something that's going to not only be positive for Dylan Gabriel and Lebby, but can permeate into the entire offense. I think that's great. That's all I wanted to say. Preston, I'm going to pass it to you. What are your expectations after watching UTEP last weekend? What were you thinking, and what are you expecting to see?
Yeah, so really, I'm just expecting to see an Oklahoma team that goes out there, plays hard, and realistically can just improve on the defense in ways that maybe we haven't seen in the past 5 or 6 years, right? That's tackling is the biggest thing. And then what is that secondary going to be able to do? I want to see UTEP throw the ball around, and I want to see how our secondary is going to be able to cover that. It's not that UTEP and Kent State are good teams, but we should at least have an idea of what the identity of this team is going to be, right? Are they going to go out there? Are they going to play hard, even if they're up 55-0? I don't know if that's what the score is going to be, but if they're up 55-0, are they going to be able to continue to act like they're running through a brick wall? I really want to see what the leadership on this team looks like. They OU just released their week 1 captains, and it's going to be Deshaun White, Braden Willis, Dylan Gabriel, Agwebu, and Broyles. I want to see what this leadership looks like from those captains. I want to see what TD Roof's going to be doing on the sideline with that linebacker crew, right? Because he's a very extremely smart kid. He understands this defense very well. And there's a lot of linebackers in here, especially young guys, that are going to need a guy like TD Roof to step up. So for me, expectations wise, is I'm going to be watching a lot of this defense. I know what my offense is going to produce. OU's done it in the past. They're going to keep doing it. I'm not worried about that. I want to know, what am I going to get from the defense? Are we going to be able to fix little things like just wrapping people up and tackling them, which has probably been the biggest issue for OU for years?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, before we completely turn focus to depth charts, which we got a lot of people wanting to talk about that, and I'm just going to keep y'all waiting for a second more, because there is one player who had a fantastic week 0 that we need to give them their due, and that's Drake Maye at North Carolina. Boy went out there and balled, right? Gentlemen, does that change your perception of North Carolina any going through this season? Jay, I'll start with you.
For Heisman. I think it changed from me. I think North Carolina almost a little more, because remember last year they were ranked, what was that, in the top 10 to start the season, and then we forgot that they existed because they completely fell down and tumbled, kind of like Mac Brown's team seemed to do as he's gotten older. But watching Drake Maye out there, I was really impressed. I was concerned that he was not going to get another Sam Howell or anyone that would be able to produce like him. And then when Drake got out there, I just want to see more of his passing and see what he does. The problem I had is that they let FAMU be able to score as much as they did. I mean, was that 24 points, and it was close in, what was that, the end of the second quarter going into halftime?
It was a game.
That concerns me. That's a concern, especially a team that's missing 24 players. Mac Brown, your defense has got to do better than that. So as far as the team goes, a little bit, because they was able to pull away. They finally took advantage of the fact that FAMU was going to be exhausted because they were missing guys. But I do like what I saw to Drake Maye. I want to see what he looks like going up against some actual ACC talent, because ACC does have a tendency to have a defense here or there. When they play Clemson, God. That'll tell me everything. That'll tell me if I'm still going to be on the Drake for Heisman campaign. But as of right now, I did like what I saw. Hopefully the game plan continues and they're able to produce.
Look, I don't know if I'm taking a Drake Maye for Heisman, but I did love what I saw out of him. I completely agree, though. That defense was problematic, right? Like, that's going to be something that has to be fixed. PG, what'd you think?
Yeah, Drake Maye looked really good. Again, it's Florida A&M.
No doubt,
So
no
I
doubt,
feel
no
like
doubt.
I could go out there and put up, at least 150, 175 yards. He put up 294, but it's Florida A&M. I think we're really going to get to see what Drake May is next week when they have to go to Appalachian State. And then he gets another pretty easy team in Georgia State, but then you got to go play Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, at Miami. You get a break with Duke, but then you got to play Pitt, and then you got to go to Wake Forest. I know Wake Forest defense isn't great, but I mean, it's still one of the top tier ACC teams. And then you
No
got to end
doubt.
the season with NC State. So we're going to get a lot of opportunity to see what Drake May is. And I think, especially by that Notre Dame game, we're going to be able to tell, hey, this kid's for real or he's not. I think by the time we get to that NC State game, we'll know what he's going to be next year for sure.
No doubt. No doubt at all. And I love that you brought up the schedule, because as impressed as I was about Drake May, I think if you're a new quarterback trying to take over for a guy like Sam Howell, I do think it is telling to go out there and have that type of performance. I think it inspires hope. Completely agree with both of you. We do have to rein it in a bit given who the opponent was, and defensively, that was just bad. Now, we've kept the people waiting long enough. Gentlemen, I have two Oklahoma guests with me. Both make great content. Because of that, I'm going to make them wait for me to talk about Alabama's depth chart before I give them theirs. So I'm going to keep it brief because there really wasn't a whole lot that stood out to me. Now, one thing I do want to talk with both of you about, there's a freshman defensive lineman for Alabama that is getting a lot of press right now. There's a freshman defensive lineman that Nick Saban has been talking about, even saying today he's tough to block and he's someone who could contribute massively this year. Jaheim Otis comes into the situation after dropping 40 pounds this offseason and looks to be a contributor for this Alabama defensive front. The only other area where I was just like, wow, this is super intriguing, freshman wide receiver Kobe Prentice is listed as the starting H receiver. This is a dude that can flat out fly. Nick Saban was singing his praises. This wide receiver core is going to be super interesting. Not too much surprising at the running back position. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to set college football on fire. I think you can take that to the bank. As Nick Saban Jr. says, Otis, cannot wait to see what he does. We needed someone on the interior of that defense as the exterior is spoken for. Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, we're good. Who's on the interior? That's the question. Hopefully we can get that answered. So whenever I look at all of this, I think that I'm super high on what Alabama's bringing to the table this year. Tight end Cameron Latou is injured right now, but they have some guys that I'm really intrigued by. In fact, if you look, the guys listed second and third on the depth chart, two true freshmen, one of which, gentlemen, was an individual by the name of Amari Niblack. Amari Niblack started off his senior year ranked, I think, 1,300 in the nation and finished in the top 300. This is a dude. Nick Saban said if he plays defense, he compared him to Will Anderson. Offensively, he compared him to Julio. Nick Saban said that. This is a guy I can't wait to see. Now, obviously, we have to see it on the field, but not too much surprising about Alabama's roster. On the other hand, I didn't think there was anything too surprising about Oklahoma's roster, but I'm going to let y'all talk about this because there was some surprise on social media about it, as Chris Griffin seems to be here, but having a little bit of trouble with the camera coming in. We'll let him get it situated, and whenever he gets here, he'll hop back in. But Jay, I'll start with you. What was your takeaways from Oklahoma's roster reveal?
So, and someone mentioned this in the comments that jumped out to me was Gavin Sawchuk not being on the depth chart, but I did see Tyree Walker. I expected Tyree to get some game. Whenever he transferred to Oklahoma and I was watching some of his film, he honestly felt like a Quentin Griffin. Then when I watched him in the spring game, I was like, oh yeah, he's a Q. The way he runs, small little bowling ball, bounces off everybody, very hard to grab.
Maurice Jones-Drew.
There you go. Right. I expect him to get a lot of run behind, all the other running backs with Eric Gray and Marcus Majors. I think Marcus Majors is going to have a breakout year. I have a thing for Eric Gray. I like him a lot. My other team is Tennessee. He played at Tennessee. And so I have a love for him. When he came to Oklahoma, I was like, perfect choice. Stay within the two teams that I enjoy. But I don't know about him being a feature back. I think he's more of a change of pace guy or, You bring him out and put him out to the slot, something like that. He doesn't feel like a number one. But I think Tyree Walker is. Him and Marcus Majors, yeah, I think him and Marcus Major could be the 1-2 punch that you're looking for in order for Oklahoma to get the numbers they need. And then Javonte Barnes, I kind of had Barnes a little bit higher than Sawchuk. Like, I love the way how fast Gavin is, but Javonte always felt like a DeMarco Murray. Like, he felt like a clone to me when I looked at their stats. 6 foot, 220, roughly the same dude. So, and he runs just like DeMarco. And so that was the one thing that really jumped out the most to me. That was like, okay, so they're going to go ahead and probably redshirt Gavin. And then, of course, you've got the other running back, Emeka Megwa, who just showed up on the roster Friday. It's like, who's this guy? And I believe he's coming off of knee surgery, so we won't see him this season. But that was what jumped out to me the most when it comes to the depth chart itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Preston, I'm going to pass it to you. We're going to wait and see if we can get Chris in here consistently. But what stood out to you in terms of depth chart?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that stood out to me was the cheetah roll, because I didn't hear Deshaun White as much in the cheetah roll as much as I heard Justin Harrington. So it was a little shocking to me to see White as that starting at the cheetah roll. Now, I saw someone else mention it. Harrington will probably take that over by the end of the season, but that one jumped out to me a little bit. Another thing is the when you go down to specialists and you look at the kicker, Zach Schmidt and Gavin Marshall. So this is a position that actually really intrigues me for this season. Probably, to me, one of the most intriguing positions on this football team, because I don't know what we have in a kicker this year. I don't know if we have a reliable kicker this year. We haven't really seen these guys a whole lot. And so, I'm curious to see who's going to be able to win that battle and who's going to be able to be the kicker throughout the season. Other than that, I mean, this is kind of what I expected. I mean, Sawchuk, yeah, from what I hear, that is kind of weird not to see him on there. But I expect Tyree Walker to be, one of our running backs that we're going to see a lot this season, because he gives me a lot of that Ramondre Stevenson feel, where he's just going to be able to go in there and run and pound it, kind of like what we used to see with those old Alabama offenses. He's kind of built like that, and that's what I expect we're going to be able to see out of Tyree Walker. Obviously, we know we're going to see a lot out of Marcus Major and Eric Gray, so not a lot of shock there, but this is about what I expected.
Yeah. Chris, seems like we got you a little bit. If you can hear me, you want to give your shot at what surprised you with the roster reveal? Well, as I say that, we don't have Chris. So I'll talk about, for me, one of the things that I thought was interesting, though I don't know how surprising it was, because it wasn't a name that, when I talked to Chris was ever really filling me in a whole lot about, or anybody I'd talked to. It wasn't a name I was hearing, but it's a name I think has a lot of upside, and that's Clayton Smith. Now, that being said, I think when you look at what you have at the position, you still have to be very, very, very confident. So I don't know that it's the biggest issue. I completely agree with you, Jay. I'm really big on Eric Gray. I'm not going to shy away from it, and here's why. Because I trust DeMarco Murray. I'm not an Oklahoma fan, but I have full faith that guy right there is elite at what he knows about being a running back. Mm-hmm. A year ago, he said Eric Gray's our most versatile running back. And then he went on to talk about versatility is exactly what we're looking for. So DeMarco is incredibly high on this dude. And because of that, until DeMarco says something to prove otherwise or shows people a reason not to trust him, I'm going to remain high on him, because I do believe when we look at how Jeff Lebby in particular utilizes his offense, Eric Gray fits like a glove. Remember what I said in a video. I don't know if either of you gentlemen watched the Marvin Mims video I put together, talking about how Marvin Mims had just as many touches as Jerrion Ealy did out the backfield. Jerrion Ealy's a running back. Jeff Lebby's going to get running backs the ball out the backfield. He's going to throw to the running backs. Eric Gray is going to eat up teams in that role. Really love that. But outside of that, I do agree in terms of, if you're talking about a power run, Marcus Major is the name to go. And I certainly won't push back there. And to all the Oklahoma fans that have said that to me, no pushback there whatsoever. I do agree. But I do think there is something about Eric Gray. There's a reason why people are still so excited about him. Now, I'm going to give y'all a name, right, that I'm very excited about. Oh, Preston, you just said you just noticed Redmond. I'm going to let you talk about Redmond here. I can't wait to see Billy Bowman, right? I'm in Denton, Texas right now. Denton Ryan is right down the street where they play. Literally, if I was an athlete, I could probably hit the stadium with the football. But Billy Bowman is someone who, when he was in high school, I would go just to watch him play. He and his teammates, dear Lord, that Ryan team is fantastic. So is the Geyer team. I'm going to back off. PG, I want to let you talk about some Redmond because I saw you drop that comment in there.
Yeah. I want to interact with people on YouTube too, but yeah, no, Redmond actually, that one shocks me a little bit that he is not in the starting role and that Jordan Kelly is above him. I don't know what you guys think about that, but there's been a lot of just high expectations for Redmond since he's got to Oklahoma, and the injuries have plagued him a lot, and this has got to be his breakout year, I would assume, and for him not to be in that starting role, I mean, that I feel like that's a little concerning a little bit. Maybe he's not, living up to the expectations to that coaching staff. I don't know. That one just shocks me. I expected to see him as a starter.
And ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, we seemingly have Chris Griffin of the Horns Down podcast. And what a time. Chris, I want to get your reaction. Oklahoma roster reveal. What surprised you? What takeaways do you have? And what players are you really looking forward to?
One of the pleasant surprises that I have on this depth chart is honestly Kendall Dennis. Coming out, hey, Eaton, Dennis, you were pretty excited about what Grinch was doing with those guys. Eaton was a kid that a lot of people wanted. A lot of people had him pretty highly touted. So I was pleasantly surprised to see him in the spring game, the activity and all the rest of that. And that just kind of goes to show you that, hey, there's some guys on this roster. There's some, some hidden gems on this team. Definitely happy about that. As far as another thing I was kind of surprised at, but you've heard a lot about it, was just Agwebu. What kind of step was he going to take, coming into this season, coming into this camp? His preparation seemed to be different, just everything. I think probably one of the bigger surprises for me was the fact that Jake McCoy, we don't see Clayton Smith, few guys like that on there, but you see Jake McCoy as a walk-on, kind of playing that who's second on the depth chart at Mike. But you kind of just have to trust the pedigree and trust Venables, because Venables has made, Boulware, first name that sticks out to you at Clemson. He's notorious for putting those type of guys back there, because why? They're smart and they're coaches on the field. They're an extension of him, and they tackle like all get out. And that's all that you're asking them to do. And his defense, like we talked about plenty of times, is kind of it's like interchangeable parts, the way they like to do. They're so multiple with a lot of things. As far as anything else, one of the things I'm definitely excited about is just this offensive line. I am really excited to see what they do with this new scheme, this new field, the whole zone scheme. I think that's.
Yeah, I don't know if he's having some internet problems, but unless we get him back, that's something I resonate with as an Alabama fan, because our offensive line was inconsistent at best last year. New scheme brought in with Eric Wolford could be huge. That right there for Oklahoma is going to be big. And I know we've all talked before the importance of Schmitty for the offensive line, right? Because Bill Bedenbaugh is still there. I have faith in Bill Bedenbaugh, but his ability to have somebody in the strength and conditioning room that's really going to allow him, I think, to maximize the offensive line is going to be huge. So I think his internet is giving him some problems. So we'll just keep that. We'll keep that. Oh, there it goes. I was going to keep it right there for everybody.
And hold on, one thing on Schmitty, he's really important for the offensive line, but I think we forget how important he is for that defense.
No doubt.
Because when Schmitty left, that's when the defense took a turn for the worst.
That's when it took down. Yeah, that's when it started going down. With that, I got two that also jumped out. I want to wait till everybody else kind of went, but it is mentioned in the comments. Marcus Stripling, I thought he was starting. He was one of my favorites in the spring game, and I thought, oh, he's going to do some damage. He's a backup, but I wonder if the strategy is to shift them out a lot, so that they can wear down on the opposing offensive line, because they're actually stacked. that was something that Clemson used to do. Think back to when Oklahoma played Clemson. It was at the Orange Bowl. Back when Baker was quarterback, that was one thing that Clemson would do to Oklahoma. Those big guys would lean on that line. They would exhaust them. And when they got them exhausted, I remember Wayne Gallman in an interview said that he looked at the defense for Oklahoma. Their hands were on their knees. He said, "Coach, give me the ball. And I want to run it down their throat." And he just pounded and pounded and pounded Oklahoma in that game. I feel like that's something that they're preparing for. They want to be able to shift those defensive linemen out, in and out, beat up on the opposing offensive line. I think that will make something happen. But one other player that jumped out to me was one player that I really liked was Tyler Guyton, the transfer from TCU. He's
super high.
He's right behind Anton Harrison. And I did not think that he would jump that high in the depth chart this early. He's very athletic. Like he caught touchdowns at TCU. And that jumped his athleticism and as thin as he looks, but being as heavy as he is, that jumped out. And him being on the depth chart that high, because he was considered a project coming in. Yeah. A lot of people didn't think that he was someone that was refined enough to start yet. He's not starting, but he's a lot higher in the depth chart than I thought. I thought he'd been third to start off. And that's, to me, something that's telling me something that they may have found a diamond in the rough getting him away from TCU.
He's a guy that played defense. He has played defense. He has played a lot. And actually, kind of cool, friend of the show, I did a video on Tyler Guyton, and he actually commented, and we were commenting to each other back and forth. Super good dude. I mean, I really enjoyed the brief. I mean, I can't say we sent more than 2 messages to each other, but it came across super good. Really excited for him. Chris, I'll let you pick up where you left off.
So what I was going to say, I don't know what's going on. I can't win today with this computer, right? But anyways, I was going to say one of the pleasant surprises about let's just take this depth chart as a whole altogether, okay? One of the pleasant surprises is the fact that even with the transfers that you got, you see that they're not the starters. So what that means is that you were able. It kind of confirms the fact a thought out that was placed out there for everybody, as far as just saying that, hey, there's more talent here. Lincoln Riley left a lot of talent here. We just have to, get that production from
a lot of meat on the bone.
Yeah, exactly. So you're pleasantly surprised by that fact right there. It's just you're not seeing a whole lot of the transfers kind of be up there. I think one of the things to think about as well, and just taking the context, injuries and all that stuff is going to happen in performance. It's going to be kind of week by week, especially these next few weeks. But I think that you're going to see a lot of guys. I mean, hell, with the cornerbacks, they've talked about possibly playing 8 guys this year. So at some point, you're going to see guys. And I think that this week, next week, and then possibly Nebraska. I still think, given what Nebraska did last on Saturday, I still think they're going to give OU their best shot. We already know that they are. So they're going to come out there energized. Crowd is going to be behind them. It's going to be like the Baylor game. They had a letdown against TCU and came out there like, hey, like nobody's business. But I think that from week to week, at least these first 3 weeks or whatnot, is going to give them a chance to kind of solidify this depth chart and kind of fill it out a lot more.
With that, you made a great point that's the secondary having all those transfers, because that was the one thing we've always said Oklahoma had the biggest problem with is the secondary was lackluster. But when you look at some of the players that are in the NFL, both Treys are doing pretty good in the NFL, and they're getting a lot of PT. So it always made me feel like it wasn't the talent, it was the coaching. And Oklahoma can bring in talent. They brought in some really good players. They just couldn't develop them up from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5 or 4 to high 4. Mm-hmm. And seeing Connie Walker as a backup, seeing CJ Colden as fourth, you're right. that tells me that the talent's there. We left a lot of meat on the bone with that defense, and they're going to capitalize. Jay Valai is going to capitalize with those players this coming season.
Before PG goes, I was just going to jump in here and say one of the things that we have to point out, Alex Grinch, if you watch this, if you ever see this, thank you for your service. Thank you for what you were able to do. However, ever, you did have Roy Manning
Ever?
coaching. Yeah, ever. You did have Roy Manning coaching our cornerbacks. So this year, you're going to see a lot of emphasis on the technique and all of that stuff. We were able to have a pulse back there. We were able to, in some instances, be really, really good on the back end during that whole stretch. However, you just feel more comfortable with Valai. Even though I know you Bama fans and you Texas fans out there have your little pushback about Valai, but I will say this: hey, we haven't had a really good secondary coach or DB coach in quite a long time here. I mean, you can go back to, what was it, Kerry Coombs, Kerry Cook, or whatever. I mean, and that wasn't really, that great of an experience. But I'm just saying, we're excited about this experiment. Let us try it out. Let us have our feel about it, and we'll tell you after this year.
Yeah, absolutely. PG, what you thinking?
Yeah, so I see a lot of people in here talking about people that are freshmen, right? And I want to go ahead and point this out. Whether it's this year or next year, 2024, whatever, unless the player is just a really, truly special freshman and they can outplay everybody else at that position, there is a good chance you're not going to see a lot of these freshmen play in the Venables defense or on a Venables team. He wants those freshmen to sit and learn that first year red shirt and take it all in, because that's how you develop better. And so if you guys don't see your favorite freshman playing right away in their first year, it's okay. It's okay. We know that these classes are going to be special. 2023 is already turning out to be that way. But like next year, if Jackson Arnold is not the starting quarterback, that's okay. Let everything play out. Let these players learn. Let's not try to throw these players in too early, because that's how they become underdeveloped. And, they get ran off and go somewhere else. So I just wanted to point that out there. Keep that in mind. If the freshmen aren't playing, everything's okay. Just let them develop.
Yeah,
With
I want
that-
to. Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick with that, and you're exactly right. If your freshmen aren't there, it's probably because you got depth as well. That's kind of the problem with the running backs, is there's no real depth. I mean, basically everybody was gone. And so that's why even the end, you had Majors and Gray, and then Tyree Walker comes, and you have nothing but freshmen afterwards. So you have no choice but to really play them. Then you got to pick and choose which one do you want to play right now. And so, yeah, it looks like Oklahoma really does actually have some depth in comparison to some years past.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, Bryce Young is a top 10 quarterback in the modern era of ranking. He didn't play his freshman year. And we know that ranking was not a fluke, because what he did last year with an inconsistent offensive line was poetry, basically, on a football field. He's incredible. He didn't play his freshman year. How many 5 stars don't play their freshman year? And PG, I'm so glad you say this. I give this spiel all the time. I mean, y'all probably going to bash your heads when you hear me say it one more time. The difference in size, speed, strength, and technique required to excel at the next level is far greater than I think most people realize. If you're at a high school and you're getting recruited by OU, you're probably the best player on your team. If not, you're easily one of the best players on your team. But it doesn't matter how good. Jay, you're getting recruited to OU. You guys play us this weekend. You are a defensive end. You're the number 3 defensive end in the nation. I'm blocking you. Is that a real good indication of how good you are? Because there's no baseline. You could go up against me, and that's not a good show of how good you are, because, like, yeah, cool, you dominated, there's a massive difference here. And that's all I think that needs to be remembered. These guys take some time to develop, and especially when you're running a complex scheme, the last thing you want is guys making mistakes. One quote I heard before I move us to our next topic and our final topic: you want your team to play fast, but you can't have fast mistakes. You got a bunch of young players on the team, you can get some fast mistakes real quick. And y'all know exactly what I mean, especially with an offense that operates like Levy's offense. You got to have supreme command. And defensively, you have got to have command of what Brent Venables wants. Now, last topic, I kind of want to gauge from y'all. I want to know, first and foremost, a few things. Most intriguing quarterback battle you're looking forward to. Second, what week 1 matchup are you most intrigued about? And then finally, when you look at this, who do you think has the most to prove week 1? Let's just go down the line. Jay, I'll start with you, then Chris, then PG.
You talked about this before with the LSU situation. I'm really curious to what that's going to turn out to be. Brian Kelly had to come in. He lost one quarterback to retirement, basically. And then he's got 2, and he won't tell us who. And so I'm really intrigued about what that's going to look like. I'm actually going to go to Baton Rouge and watch a game where my daughter actually goes to college there. And so I'm going to go down there, see her, go see them play Tennessee, and try to get a feeling of how they do it down there in back. But that's probably the quarterback that jumped me the most. And then game-wise for week 1, honestly, I'm kind of, and this is going for y'all. Y'all going to think this is really, really weird. I want to see what you does against Rice. Now, I say that for one reason. They brought in so many players. And of course, most Oklahoma fans do not like Lincoln Riley or what USC is doing. I want to see if they let Rice stay in that. Rice is known for giving people problems. They're known for a team that plays pretty disciplined enough. And so they're going to give them hell. I'm curious if CW and all of them can handle the type of defense that I don't know is going to be very good. But I think their defense is something that's going to force them to think a little bit out of the box. Now, they may go out there and blow them. But if it's a closer game than expected, I know Oklahoma fans are going to love it. So that's kind of the one I'm really intrigued to see USC look like coming out with a new coach, a whole bunch of transfers, rumors that's going on around.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, what are your thoughts?
So quarterback battle, obviously, I got to go with the donkeys of the day. Let's go to Ann Arbor. We got to talk about Michigan. I mean, literally, what is that? Like, what are we doing, Jim Hart? I mean, literally, like, what? Somebody explained that to me. I was just like, what is the purpose? Like, hey, you're starting your backup against basically FCS opponent. Which I mean, I know they're not FCS, but I'm just saying. I mean, but that's probably the most interesting battle I think out there right now, simply because of the storyline. Both quarterbacks are going to start each game, the first 2 games, and you're just sitting there like, okay, this could be a train wreck. This could possibly be bad. As far as games the first week, I'll name off a couple that I'm going to be keeping an eye on. First off, I want to see what O State does against Central Michigan. O State notoriously struggles those first games. I think that it's going to be interesting. Do they keep it vanilla the entire time, or what do they do? You know, they don't have Tate Martin. Zach got on the show and said they returned this guy and Langston Andrews and all the, and I'm just like, okay, that's fine. I like the Green Twins. Let's see what they can do. Their running game, all of that. Can Spencer Sanders actually make those plays, or are we going to see what happened a few years ago with Central Michigan? Another game that I would say it's Thursday night, Ty. Also, another game on Thursday I'll be looking out for is Penn State at Purdue. I think that's going to be a heavy hitter right there, simply because that's going to give you a good indication of how Penn State is going to go. And definitely, since they have to go to Auburn week 3. I mean, you know what I'm saying? TJ Finley season, you know all about that, Ty. Don't worry about that. Auburn by 40. But anyways, I think the next game that I would say I have to definitely circle. I know people are talking about Notre Dame and Ohio State, but Utah at Florida. Can Anthony Richardson get the job done? Is he the guy? Is he the guy that we all expect him to be? Florida should win this game. I'm picking Florida. But like I said, Ty, and we said we got to trademark it, right? Utah is either consistently good or they're consistently bad. There's no in between. So it just depends on what kind of Utah team you're going to get. But those are really that, and outside of the Georgia and Oregon game, those are games that I'm going to be definitely paying attention to this college football weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. PG, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so you kind of took mine, but I thought the Michigan quarterback battle was actually pretty interesting. And honestly, I think it's a genius idea because you're basically saying, hey, I want to see how you both do in game time situations, but they're games that we should honestly win regardless of who's starting at quarterback because we can out talent either of those teams. And then from there, we're going to make our decision who's going to be the starting quarterback because I think McCarty has probably the highest ceiling, but McNamara makes probably less mistakes. And so it's interesting that he did it that way. And so I'm interested to see how that's going. However, another interesting quarterback situation, I say situation because it's not necessarily a battle. I'm curious to see what Alabama does with this quarterback room because you have Bryce Young out there, but outside of that, if you go look at their roster, it's all freshmen, if I'm correct.
Jalen Milroe is a sophomore, he's a sophomore at this point.
Okay, so ESPN doesn't have their thing updated right because it says all freshmen on there. But I'm curious to see how that's going to go for them in that quarterback room.
Red shirt's freshman, but this is his second year. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens if Bryce Young goes down? Is it going to be Ty Simpson or who's going to be able to step up in that quarterback room? So Alabama should be able to go blow Utah State out. And so I'll be curious to see what quarterback steps up in that number 2 role and who looks the best, because that's in the SEC. That's definitely a very well possibility that a quarterback could go down with how athletic everybody is on the defense. And so that one intrigues me a little bit. But a game that I'm going to be watching is Oregon and Georgia because Georgia lost so much on that defense. Oregon actually, I think people are underlooking Oregon here a little bit because Mario Cristobal put Oregon in a very, very good position, even leaving. Even though they lost Travis Dye, they're still in a really good position. And I'm curious to see who wins that quarterback position. Is it Bo Nix or is it Ty Thompson? What is Oregon going to be? Oregon could go out there and do what they did to Ohio State. Even though they say it's a neutral site game, it's in Atlanta. It's a home game. They could go beat Georgia in their territory. And then Georgia could go lose another game in the SEC, whether it's a championship or in their just conference games, and that knocks them out of playoff contention. So that game is very interesting because a lot of people have Georgia making their playoffs, and I think a lot of people are overlooking at just what Georgia lost in the offseason. Additionally, I want to see what Texas does against the University of Louisiana Monroe because that's a pretty high over-under for them, 37 points. And, they have a lot of question marks, whether it's on the offensive line or on the defense. I think they're going to be able to put it together offensively, but are they going to be able to put it together defensively to go meet these lines that are going to be put out there? And then one that I just think is fun that I want to watch, what's UTSA going to do? They had such a magical season last year. I want to see what they're going to be able to go do this year. I think that's an interesting team that everybody should be watching because it seems like they're an up-and-coming G5 team.
I love that last pick. I love that last pick, man. I think that's great.
I got a question. Talking quarterback battles, and Sooner fans will probably love to get the same answer. I'm not sure if anybody's tied in to know what's going on. Ole Miss. Why isn't Jackson Dart named the starting quarterback? What's going on there? Oklahoma, he was a target. He was someone that Oklahoma really wanted. It doesn't look like he's going to win this job. Like
they said, did you watch the spring game?
I didn't.
Did you?
I saw some analysis on it.
Outside of all 3 Texas A&M quarterbacks, that may have been the worst performance in the spring game. And I don't put a lot of stock in spring games because, look, Baker and Collar didn't have the greatest spring games. They threw picks in those games.
Yeah,
but
the defense is prepared for you.
But at the same time, I mean, I'm just gonna be real. I'm just gonna be real. If you saw this spring game, hell no.
Yeah. No. Look, I'm gonna take my stab at answering this, and then I'm gonna close this out because I love the question. My only question would be: is he a fit for what Lane Kiffin wants to do? I know that off the top of your head, it might seem easy to say yes, but at the same time, Lane Kiffin likes a certain type of quarterback to be able to maximize what he does. Not saying that he can't be successful with different quarterback types, but the question to me is is Altmaier more the type of quarterback Lane is comfortable running with this offense as opposed to Jackson Dart? I don't know the answer, but I am surprised that Dart hasn't shored this up, because he was a guy USC felt good about if they didn't land Caleb Williams. He was a guy that when he entered the transfer, Oklahoma was interested in, and not just Oklahoma, very talented quarterback. But to answer the questions I posed to y'all, the quarterback battle I'm so in tune with is this LSU battle. Because when I look at it, LSU has one of the best wide receivers in the nation, right? I don't know there's any debating that in Butte, however, he's unbelievable. Not only that, they have what I believe a top defensive line in the nation that was unbelievable last year that's only going to get better this year. Jaden Daniels was a kid that lit college football on fire his freshman year, but he was in a chaotic environment. I can't, with any good grace, expect him to flourish in an environment like Arizona State when they had all those investigations going, when he couldn't keep coaches, players, what have you. But the question is who is he as a player? If he is who college football at large thought he was, he could be a really big addition for LSU and could really take them over the top because of his athleticism. Gentlemen, remember, that Oregon game, he went shot for shot with none other than Justin Herbert, and he did so very well. Can we see that version of him again? I don't know, but that's why I'm so in tune with that LSU quarterback battle. The game of the week for me is simple, but it's Ohio State Notre Dame, right? Yeah. You got a top 5 matchup right then and there, but that's not going to be my ultimate answer. I have 2 games that, as much as I want to see Ohio State Notre Dame, I want to see these games just as much. One of them, Preston, you talked about. That's that Georgia-Oregon game. Now, do I expect Oregon to pull the upset? I don't. And the reason is I don't know how you're going to stop Georgia's tight end room. Brock Bowers is just a cheat code right now. And I have bad news for people. Not only did they return him because he was a true freshman, they got a 6'8" tight end on their roster who was a 5-star coming out of high school. He apparently is getting a bigger role this year. That's terrifying. Now, Dan Lanning is going to have a great understanding of how to beat them. And he was left some great pieces, to your point, PG, especially at that linebacker position. I'm talking Justin Flo, Noah Sewell, which on paper could be about as explosive as a linebacking duo as we see in the country. The other team I'm interested in, Utah, Florida. Kyle Whittingham has Utah in a really interesting place right now, but I'm not thinking about this game in relation to Utah. I'm thinking about this game in relation to Florida. Anthony Richardson looks to be the starting quarterback. Billy Napier comes in there, and if this was any other year, Billy Napier's leash would probably be a lot less tight. We're talking the same year where Mario Cristobal and them are setting the recruiting trail on fire right now. Florida's getting their own guys, but the presence of Mario Cristobal is sure to increase the pressure on Billy Napier, even though they're not both in the SEC, not even to speak of what they have in their own division in the SEC, which is the former national championship. And as Alpha points out, they have Eric Gilbert as well at Georgia. So Florida is in a situation where they need to come correct quickly, and there's a team in their division that, geez Louise, if you're talking tight end talent, I just don't know what more you could want. Alpha, roll out 13 personnel. Forget it. Roll it out, because at this point, how are you going to stop it? Those are the games I'm looking at, and I'll let y'all have your.
So you said Oregon, Dan Lanning's this, Dan Lanning's going to do that, right? Let me take a page out of Lee Corso's book. Not so fast, my friend.
Oh, I have Georgia winning that game.
If he rolls out there, just let me say, if he rolls out there with Bo Picks, yes, Bo Picks, not Nix, Bo Picks. If he rolls out there with Bo Picks as his quarterback, we all know the end result of that game, okay? We all know the end result. Ty, be honest with yourself.
Well, I led that off by saying I'm picking Georgia to win this game. But if you're talking storylines, you have Dan Lanning, who just coached in a national championship this year with Georgia, now taking on his old team. That's about as compelling of a storyline as I think there is in college football.
Let me ask you, like, here's a compelling storyline for this podcast. If I roll the football out there and I say, hey, Coach Ty, who you picking as your quarterback? Are you going with Stetson Bennett or Bo Picks?
I'm going to go with neither.
No, quarterback.
I'm going Stetson, but like Man, I know Stetson's not going to lose me a game. He doesn't make mistakes, which is why I'm going to go Stetson. Stetson's I'm confident he's not going to be a reason I lose a game. I can't say the same with Bo Nix.
Bo Nix is so much fun, though. I love that you picked him because it's just fun to watch him. He's going to either do the Bo Nix thing or the Bo Picks thing or something else. It's just fun to watch. So it does make it a compelling story. He just
brings this up because Bo Nix does well against Alabama. That's the only reason he continues bringing this up. That's why he keeps saying Auburn by 40.
It's probably why Bo do very well against Georgia. He may actually be prepared for a change. No?
Nah.
Gentlemen, this has been a ton of fun. I'm going to let y'all tell the people where they can find you at. This has been great. We're going to have to do this frequently during the season. Guys, if you're in here, live streams Monday where we recap the week we just saw in college football. Live streams every Friday now where we talk about the week to come. So if you're wondering why we're not diving deeper into week one action, you're going to have to wait till Friday for that one. Gentlemen, where can they find you at? We'll just go straight down the line. Yeah.
I'll lead the way. Jay, Unfair Sports. Find us on YouTube. All my college content is that. If you want a podcast where I just ramble about all of the latest hands in all of sports, search the same name, Unfair Sports.
You guys can find me at Chris with a K with the C and H. Yeah, Chris with a K, Chris with an _K on Twitter. You guys can find us also at the Horns Down Pod on Twitter. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. Find us on YouTube as well. The Horns Down Podcast. Follow us. It's on. Talking season is over, y'all. It's time.
Yeah, y'all can find me on Twitter at the PG Show _ or you guys can find me on YouTube at the PG Show. I'm also on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We got a lot of good content coming up with OU 2023 and 2024 recruits, as long as just current players coming on the podcast, learning a little bit more about them. I will end it on a note for you guys. When you guys sit down to go watch college football over the next couple weeks, top 25 matchups are really fun to watch. Go pay attention to the bottom feeders of these conferences and see how they play. I'm talking Kansas, Vanderbilt, teams like UTSA who have to go play Houston and a bunch of other teams the first week. Go watch how those teams play the first couple weeks and see if we can get an idea of if they can cause any trouble in these conferences for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be just exactly what we need in 2022 with all the chaos of this offseason. And that's why, right as everybody was getting on, I thought the best way for us to kick off the 2022 season, upset in Ireland, Northwestern down to Nebraska, because what a better summation of this offseason than that.
Ty, before you end this, please, I was so upset that I didn't get to talk about that. What in the Scott Frost was that? Up 11 in the third quarter.
Well, you know what I messaged to y'all.
Yeah, and you saw what I tweeted.
Yeah.
You saw. I was just like, huh? The defensive coordinator had to turn his back and be like, "Hey guys, great drive. Hey, we're gonna get them. We're gonna make them work the field." And then I'm sure one of the defensive linemen was like, "Coach, what the hell was that?" And he turned around and he said, "My God, I quit. I can't do this.
My God, I quit.
I can't do this." I
mean, he's doing shows. He's doing shows in Ireland right now and the pubs. So I had to tweet that out. They had to leave on the tarmac. They should have, but they didn't. They should have.
Scott Frost is sitting there at the end of the game talking about, well, we just, we're gonna have to be a lot more creative with our play calling and everything. And I was like, that's what lost you the game.
You want to know the really crappy thing though? Here's the crappy thing. Scott Frost knows he can't be fired, because his buyout right now is $15 million. October 1st, it goes down to 7.5. I don't think Nebraska's paying $7.5 million to fire this guy, and he knows it. So he's just going to continue doing this, and Nebraska fans are just going to have to keep suffering.
You know what? Going back to Bo Picks, the reason why I don't like Bo Picks is I haven't met anybody named Bo that was a good person, except for one guy, and his name was Bo Pelini. And that guy right there led Nebraska to 9-3 seasons, year in and year out. I bet you guys missed that now, don't you? You had the what was that coach from Oregon State? That was terrible. That was a terrible experiment. And now you come and get Scott Frost. Everybody thought, yeah, he's got to work. He's going to be good. Ty came in here talking about it's the best 3-9 team I've ever seen, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, I can't do it anymore. I just can't. I've given up on Nebraska, like literally. They're going to give us a great game. They'll probably play us close in Lincoln. I know a lot of people think we're going to blow them out. I kind of have my reservations about that, but just literally going back to that play right there, I'm just thinking to myself, what in the Scott Frost was that? Why?
That's coaching scared. And that's people will say that's coaching, confident. No, that's coaching scared.
Yeah, watch how Pat Fitzgerald stood on the sideline, watched Scott Frost the entire time and said, beat me in a 1-score game.
And he can't do it again and again. Well, boys, it's been a great time. We'll see y'all again very soon. Thank you for everybody coming on. We'll see y'all Friday as we do a preview for week 1 and then again on Monday. Until then, that's it. See ya.
All right.